Well, hi everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee and meteorologist Joe Rayo on the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Sunday morning. Whether you are watching it live or you're listening to it on the podcast, which you can find on Spotify and in a few other places. Hope you had a very good holiday weekend, Mr. Rayo. You gained a daughter-in-law.
I gained a daughter-in-law. That was on Friday, and today another special day in the house. My daughter is celebrating her birthday. It's her birthday today.
30?
I'm not saying no, it's not. I'll say she's not
You're
that
not
old.
entitled to have a funeral
You're
birthday
not
until you
supposed to
turn
tell.
30.
Once as you ought to know. You're the father of three girls. You don't once they get past 21, you're really not supposed to say how old
Oh,
they are.
please. I do what I
So,
want. I say what I want. So,
let's see.
everything I assume went well on Friday?
Yeah, well, it was a nice quiet ceremony. Thanks to COVID-19, we had a minimum of people there, but everything came off as scheduled, and they are now officially married. So, what else can I say?
I know.
You've gone through it.
All I kept,
You've gone through it. I've gone through it.
I
So,
know. Unfortunately, one of the things that crossed my mind was the the line from the honeymooners, but it doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work here because it was in reverse. It was in reverse, and B, it was a joke of directed at the at Ralph, where the mother-in-law said, "I'm not losing a daughter, I'm gaining a ton."
right.
Right? It doesn't work here.
I don't remember exactly what the limerick was, but it was the night before Stanley, who was marrying Alice's sister.
Right.
Uh, they were at the Raccoon Lodge, and I don't remember the words to the limerick or whatever like that, but Art Carney was reciting it, and I do remember the last lines. You get out of town tonight.
Because he was marrying Agnes.
Agnes, that's right.
Agnes.
That's
So,
right.
so while you were your wedding ceremony, actually after your wedding ceremony, because it happened a little later than that, I was sitting out in the front of the house, and there's a little porch with a big overhang. So when it's raining, you can sit out there and you're perfectly dry. So I'm sitting out there watching and enjoying the thunderstorms that moved through here Friday night, which
I
were
didn't.
what's
I
that?
didn't. I was out your way on Friday for the wedding, and at about 6:30 in the evening, when it was time to vamoose and head back home, uh, yours truly had to drive in those thunderstorms. And let me tell you, there were even with the windshield wipers going at their maximum,
Right.
a lot of people on the LIE with their hazard lights flashing, because Joe, it was not a picnic
Right. Well,
trying to
well, listen.
and all the times last week that I got nailed here up in Putnam County, I was getting hit, as you know, heavy thunderstorms, and not hail, but heavy downpours. I was
Right.
picking up each day. I was picking a half inch one day, a quarter inch another day, 3/4, and like you were complaining, you had a boilerplate on where you were,
Well, I
and
don't anymore.
you weren't seeing anything, right?
Right.
I go out your way. I get hit by all of this. I come home. I look at the rain gauge in my house. 7/100ths of an inch.
Well, my my story ends a little differently. So I'm sitting on the porch in the front of the house, and I'm relaxing, and I'm having a glass of wine. I'm smoking a cigar. I'm just kind of laid back, and all of a sudden there was a big kaboom. Okay, there's
Right.
supposed to be a kaboom. There was a big kaboom, a huge, and when I say a kaboom, it was so loud that it actually hurt me. Okay,
Did the
I mean,
walls did the walls shake?
no, I
I
was
had
outside. I saw the
oh
lightning bolt.
okay.
And guess the lightning bolt hit the pole that's about 35, 40 feet beyond where I was sitting. And I'm watching this, okay?
Right.
It
Right.
hit it hit the box, the internet box.
Oh,
Of all
ouch.
things, it hits the internet box. So I'm saying this because I have no internet service, so I'm actually doing this off the hotspot on my phone. So the data is limited with that. Going to try to make it last as long as I can because I don't know when these people are going to come back. So you're allowed so many megabytes of a month, uh, and with COVID, Verizon expanded the amount, but it's still not enough to carry us through a bunch of live streams every day. So going to have to uh, do with we'll hopefully we'll have this taken care of in the next couple of days. But it was
Welcome.
it
You got
hurts.
mail.
Yeah, you got mail.
I got
Okay.
bail too.
Yes.
Yeah.
The lightning the strike was it sounded like an explosion. I mean, really just a big explosion. Huge flash of light, big kaboom. What does it hit? It hits the pole with my internet box on it. So anyway, a pretty quiet day today overall, from what I'm looking at. There really isn't a whole lot going on, not just here, but around the country. And I guess the only question in my mind is whether we see a pop up shower or a thunderstorm this afternoon, because other than that, it really just looks like a hot, humid day around here.
Yeah, and a kind of a disappointing morning start to the morning, Joe. We For those people who have asked on the chat board over the last week or so about the newest Comet NEOWISE, this thing has developed into a beautiful comet, one with a very bright star-like head and a long sweeping tail of gas and dust. And I've seen pictures of this from Europe. I've seen pictures from friends of mine who live out in Arizona. Looking forward this morning to try to see it for myself. Got up, set the alarm at 4 o'clock this morning, headed on out to the garage, got into the SUV, pulled the SUV out, and as I was going down the driveway, I said, "Well, wait a minute. How come I don't see any stars?" I stopped the SUV, stepped out of the car, looked up, and I saw maybe three fuzz balls. I went to bed last night, bright moon, and there were a handful of stars. And in the few hours leading to dawn, there must have been either a mid-level cloud layer or maybe it was just haze
Mm.
because the haze thickened up to such a degree where I was hardly able to see anything. So I turned the car around, got back into the garage, didn't see anything this morning, and I've only gotten a brief look at the maps, but from what I see, Joe, and I don't know if you agree, from what I see, basically it's going to be the same story, rinse, wash, repeat, right on through much of this week in terms of over. If anything, it might actually turn hotter and even more humid and even hazier when we get to the middle and latter part of this week.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same place. We there just really isn't too much happening. Weather systems are very weak. We don't have any solid push coming down from the north. We're just getting into we're in pretty much in July mode. We do have, by the way, this happened yesterday, and I got such a kick out of this because on Friday, when I was looking at everything and noticed that the Hurricane Center was talking about no tropical storm development for the next 5 days, and then yesterday
Yeah.
morning I pop up and there's a tropical depression not too far from Bermuda, and it's still a depression. It has not strengthened to a tropical storm. And the only reason why this is important at this point is the fact that, and it's already northeast of Bermuda, so they had some a little wind and a little rain, but no big deal. But the reason why I bring this up in terms of importance is that if this does become a tropical storm later today or tonight, it will be the fifth tropical storm, and it'll be the earliest we've ever gotten to the E storm ever. Well, at least in terms of records going back to 1850. So that's the one important thing. And the other thing is that the Hurricane Center does talk about something that's not there now, but will be there later this week, as a weak low is going to probably develop along the Gulf Coast somewhere, and then find its way up to the Carolinas late next week, and eventually, if it moves offshore, depending on what model you look at, does it move offshore? Does it stay inland? But if it does wind up getting offshore somewhere off the Carolinas or maybe northeast of there, we might see that develop into a tropical system. But that's down the road for later this week, and then we'll take a look at how this all comes about. In the meantime, severe weather today, eastern New England mostly, although it does come into eastern Connecticut and Rhode Island, marginal risk tip just east of Montauk. So everybody else is sort of general thunderstorms, and you have slight risk being indicated up in parts of South Dakota and Montana. Tomorrow, the Storm Prediction Center is also leaving the risk area in pretty much the same place. Slight risk in parts of Montana and Wyoming. Marginal risk swings east across South Dakota into Minnesota. Just some general thunderstorms here. Day 3, which takes us to Tuesday into Wednesday. Again, Montana to North Dakota to Minnesota. General thunderstorms. As you said, it's just we're just kind of rolling along here this week. There's just not a whole lot happening.
Exactly. I'm just looking here. Actually, next weekend, there's signs that not next weekend, a week from Monday, they have some kind of a closed system that is trying to cross through the Northeast, but it just literally, as soon as it gets to us, it kind of like shrivels up. So if there's any kind of relief or any kind of a cooling trend, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, or if it does happen, it's going to be very short-lived. And again, that's not until a week or more than a week from now. Otherwise, it's the same old story.
I got a question here from Johnny Quest, who says it has to do with many different sizes of rain gauges out there. How accurate are they really? How do you know if 1 inch of rain is really 1 inch of rain?
Well, I can't really answer that question because I have one of those Davis automatic weather stations, which actually belongs to my wife. My wife, you remember the episode of I Love Lucy where Ethel kept hinting to Fred that she wanted a toaster?
Yes. Well, that was the birthday episode.
And Lucy couldn't believe that was what she really wanted. That
right.
She wanted something else. She got a pair of hostess pants or whatever.
That's correct.
But when my
you
wife
wear them when you wear them when you give smart dinner parties.
Yes.
I was wondering what I would wear on all those smart dinner parties I did.
but the thing is, maybe that was a poor analogy, but the thing was, Ethel really wanted a toaster. She did not want anything that was, elaborate or something like that. Well, my wife, for the longest time, and my wife, by the way, is a meteorologist, and she said, for Christmas, I want a weather station. I said to myself, no, she couldn't possibly want a weather station. She wants something else. You get her jewelry or get her a ring or something like that. And finally, she just like blew up and said, why didn't you get me the weather station I asked for? And I said, all right.
You actually, so did you get her the weather station for Christmas, or you got it after Christmas?
She wanted, it's one of these Davis.
So you just did what actually happens, what most women do is that you tell them what you want for Christmas, and then they get you something, and you think you're getting it. You open up the present, and it's something else, and then they say, "I know you said you wanted this, but I thought you would like this better."
Right.
And that leaves you leaves you with the position of trying to figure out, did she have the receipt for this thing? And how do I bring it back?
There's an episode of Seinfeld where I think Elaine was hinting to Jerry what she wanted. Jerry in the end just gave her like money, like $138. And it was Kramer of all people who ended up getting Elaine what she wanted. She was so happy. Anyway, I got her the weather station, and I don't know how we got started on this, but the weather station, this automated weather station, has a cone at the top.
Right.
And the rain falls into the cone and it registers. And so I look on this keyboard, this panel, automated panel,
and it tells you how much
temperature, humidity, dew points, wind, blah 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 blah. And you look in the corner there, and you see how much rain has fallen.
Yeah.
That's how I knew that on Friday night we got home, after getting bashed by maybe driving through like 5 and 6 inches of rain. It really felt that way. Like I was underneath Niagara Falls for much of the ride home from your end of Long Island.
And you got
and
nothing.
I get to the house, and I said, guess what? I'm the one tonight with the boilerplate.
Right.
Well, overhead.
Rain gauges are all pretty much calibrated a certain way, so I would assume that they're all accurate. I don't think anybody's out there, trying to make money by selling scammed rain gauges. That
we didn't have the rain gauge. We didn't have the weather station up yet. But when Irene hit in 2011, Renata had this jug that we normally would put either iced tea or lemonade or some kind of fruit drink. She had it, and it was outside on the back patio on a table.
Right.
And then came Irene. The next day, when she looked at that jug, and this thing had to be at least like 12 inches high, the jug was overflowing.
Amazing, isn't
That's
it?
how much rain we got from Irene. So,
Well, uh, I still go remember the old days with the plastic rain gauges you stuck in the grass
right,
from many moons ago.
right,
I think most of the rain gauges that are out there are standardized to make sure that you get the right reading. Speaking of rain, by the way, the South Atlantic states and the Gulf states probably are set up for some hefty rains later this week. This is the 7-day outlook, so it goes through next Sunday, and this is when we start to see whatever's going to form in the southeast that I alluded to there from what the Hurricane Center had. So there's some big rainfall amounts, especially along the coast, where we're talking about 3+ inches or more. The Northeast and northern New England continues to see their dry conditions alleviated. That was one good thing about those storms on Friday because we got a ton of rain here, so it's no longer bone dry like it was. And
right.
we're seeing the WPC folks indicating, maybe a half an inch to an inch and a half all the way down into Maryland and Virginia. Also seeing some rains up in the upper Great Lakes on the order of a couple of inches back through the plains. The West is pretty much dry. The Southern Plains, so. Everybody, everywhere else, it's kind of average. The Ohio Valley, a little bit on the dry side, only about a quarter of an inch or less in terms of rain. And on the satellite, you mentioned about those clouds, Joe, overnight. I'm just looking at the satellite picture of the Northeast, and there was a tail of clouds that seemed to develop right over you and coastal New Jersey, Long Island. That's all pushed out to the east now. We just went partly to mostly sunny here. On
Right.
the
So that was what was overhead this morning when I went out to look for the comet. I'm looking for the tail of a comet, and said I got the tail of a cloud cover.
right,
Right.
and
Lovely.
on the center right of the picture is the tropical depression. Not well organized, by the way, but there's a cluster of thunderstorms there. You can actually see the circulation center on the west side of this is somewhat exposed, not completely exposed, but somewhat exposed. So there's probably a little bit of shear move going on. And it's just moving right along to the northeast. Clouds developing across the Gulf states, the forerunners of whatever's going to happen there later this week. You look at the satellite out west, it's almost free of clouds everywhere from up and down, except along the Pacific Northwest coast, where you got that usual round of morning low clouds and fog, but also down in parts of California, Southern California along the coast, a little bit of fog there for the sunup. But other than that, it's fairly quiet. And as far as temperatures, as we're going into the midday hours, Joe, already seeing some 90-degree readings down at Doylestown in Pennsylvania, 90 with a dew point of 61. Uh, Allentown's got
It's
a
criminal.
Allentown has a
It's
dew
criminal. You should never have a 90-degree temperature anywhere before noontime.
right.
Now,
Allentown is 84 with a dew point. I don't know. Yeah, it kind of stands out a little bit. 84, but their dew point is 55, and Scranton's got a dew point of 50. So there's actually a little bit of dry air in parts of Pennsylvania. It's kind of odd. There's what's that? 81 Mount Pocono, 81 dew point 50. Catskill Center, 85, 57. Everybody else is sitting with dew points in the mid 60s, and right around New York City, by the way. Kennedy's dew point is 70. Farmingdale's dew point is 70. West Hampton Beach, Gabreski Airport's dew point is 70. So with this just small pocket of dry air that covers uh, a chunk of Pennsylvania, everybody else is just sitting in upstate New York. Because if you go up into Western New York, the dew points are all in the 50s. But then you go into the eastern part of the state, and on the other side of the Catskills, and the dew points are all the dew points start to climb up. But it's just really weird. I got one spot where the dew point is 71. You head over toward Albany to Glens Falls, the dew point there is 55. So,
wow.
I see even a 48 dew point. What is that? Springfield Airport, up in Vermont. I think that's Vermont. Yeah. Uh, looking at 48 dew points. So there's some, and then you jump over to other spots and the dew points are in the 60s. It's just very strange.
It is. It
Very
is. So
strange.
it's like a little patch, a little oasis, if you will,
Yeah.
in what is otherwise a broad area of the.
Um, we are also seeing, by the way, I'm looking down in Virginia where it's the other way. You've got dew points in the low and mid 70s in some places with temperatures in the 80s. Talk about a steam bath.
Yeah.
By the way, Scott Burler hitting super chat. Thank you so much, Scott, for doing that. Really appreciate it on this Sunday. I don't know. I'm if I sound a little bit, I'm not as.
Jason Schaefer as well. Thank you,
Oh,
Jason.
thanks, Jason. Thank you very much, Jason. My occasional producer when I worked over at the WPIX TV Channel 11.
Back when they had a real weather center.
Thank you so much. Ding, ding, ding. We ought to have a bell to ring when stuff like that happens.
Oh, Joe.
So let's really quick go through what's going to be going on this week because
Well,
I got to.
that'll take 30 seconds.
Well, that's true. Again, the thing to watch for this week is the I'll roll it back. I'm going to use the European today. Of course, remember last week's upper low, everybody, that was in the Northeast. That has moved out. And of course, you had this deep trough out in the West. That actually is also flattened out to a certain extent. But the upper pattern here uh, is you got a fairly strong ridge running up along 90 degrees west that goes that really gets strong up in the northern lakes and into south central Canada. That flattens a little bit, but there's this shortwave trough that winds up dropping down into the mid-Atlantic states late this week. And you see it here. There's this little cutoff low that forms in North Carolina. It's separated from the main flow, which is running like that, like so. Well, not quite that way. Let me fix that. So it kind of runs up like this. You got a little trough there up near Minnesota, a little ridge to the east of that over the northern lakes, and then it comes across to the northeast. So we're sort of like we're on the edge of that. That will keep things humid here, and it might get hot. But this is the system that the Hurricane Center is talking about. This upper low that's going to dictate uh, some kind of surface low to form along the southeast coast. Now, if it's inland, it's obviously not going to become anything to worry about. Or could, for anybody to be too concerned with. It's a question of whether the surface low is offshore. If it is, then maybe once it emerges, it goes northeast because that's where it will ultimately go. It's going to get picked up by that trough that's up northeast of Minnesota that drops into the eastern lakes next weekend, and then you get a nice trough here in the east late next weekend and into early next week. So maybe we'll get a break from that. And that I think, Joe.
I said that what you just mentioned is supposedly going to drop into the northeast, but then it kind of like shrivels up before it has a
Right.
chance to do anything. So
Well, the Europeans has a bit more robustness to it, and then when you look at what the GFS did last night with this, uh, again as we move through the week, you see there's really not much that goes on other than a couple of pop-ups here and there. It looks like maybe late on Tuesday, but you got more stuff there that's off the southeast coast, and the GFS on this particular run keeps the low mostly inland, and then lifts that rain up next Friday or Friday night. We'll see. I mean, there's a lot there's a lot of time to look at this and see where it winds up going. But other than that, shrug your shoulders because that's all we got.
that's all we got. That's all she wrote.
Let's take a look at the tropical Atlantic. Let's see if we are seeing anything regarding dust. I'll get this picture up here. We'll let the loop load. Yeah, it looks a little dusty coming off the African coast again, Joe. There are a couple of waves out in the Atlantic. There's one, but they're still pretty far south. They're all still south of 10 degrees north, so we're not quite there yet. There's one that is actually moving, a little wave that comes off, is to the east of the Cape Verde Islands. Not even there yet, but you notice that hazy look there on the satellite, folks. That's Saharan dust. So as we mentioned, when we've got that dust coming out, that cuts off any kind of tropical development. And on the top of the picture here, on the upper, if you look near the center, you can see the tropical depression this morning. Looks like a little bit more convection has flared up in the last couple of hours. We'll see if that holds together and winds up becoming a tropical storm. As we said, if it does, it'll be a record setter, and being the earliest that we get the fifth named storm, and that's about all she wrote. So, I got Dan, and you check out the chat to see if there's any other questions, and I'm going to pull up.
We actually had a bit of excitement, had a little informal backyard holiday barbecue yesterday here in Putnam County, and along about 5 o'clock, I heard what sounded like an aircraft, but it was a strange kind of noise. I mean, like when I lived in Levittown, I always knew when the Concorde was flying over my house because it differed from the standard, 737 or 747 type sound. And this was a weird sound. And I looked high up in the northern sky, and my mouth dropped. And I saw Joe, it was a B-2 stealth bomber, accompanied by in a V-shaped form, some F-22, smaller F-22s, and then behind that there was a whole bunch of other planes, other jet aircraft. And I was screaming like, look up, look.
Flying out of Stewart, maybe for some.
Probably, I think
for some 4th of July stuff going on somewhere. Either that or Norton was right. Get out of town.
Well, but I'm talking about they went dead over my house. I mean, like, when is the last time that you looked up above your house and you saw a stealth bomber going by, accompanied by a row?
Yeah, that's not the sort of thing that happens. We get some fighter jets that go over here sometimes because we're not too far from Gabrisky Airport and also from Farmingdale. So
I think I was told by somebody or several people on Facebook that these aircraft actually flew down the Hudson, and I guess it was part of a show that had been arranged for the 4th of July. But I wish I had known in advance. I would have, tried to take a video or something of it. But for the few moments that it was high overhead, it was pretty interesting, pretty exciting. Right. But the most exciting 4th of July air show I ever saw was back in 1986 when they had the Great Blimp Race. They actually was 7 blimps. I think it was the Fuji blimp, the Citibank blimp, a few others. And then 4 of the 7 ended up going over near the George Washington Bridge, and they flew down the Hudson. I forget which one won the race or anything, but my wife and I, we knew where the starting point was, Jones Beach Field 4. And they had at the clamshell or the place where we'd have an orchestra or a band. Skitch Henderson, the late Skitch Henderson, was there with his orchestra, with his band. And as the blimps were flying overhead, and actually they came all the way down close to the water's edge and then flew back up again, Skitch Henderson said, "We're providing music for this blimpany."
Oh, Jesus. All right, let's get Briller Jeopardy done here. How many inches of precipitation does Antarctica average per year?
Do they actually average anything? It's so cold usually during what is their winter. How many inches does Antarctica? I'm going to say, Joe, a grand total of maybe 5 or 6 inches.
It's 2.
2 inches.
2.
All right.
Okay. Now, name the 5.
I had a feeling it was going to be something very, very low, and I said, well, maybe he's not you or Scott are just fooling me or whatever. I said maybe we should go a little bit more than just a trace or an inch or two. That's why I went for the 4 or 5. So.
Name the 5 largest food chains, not supermarket chains, but food chains in America.
The 5 largest food chains? chains?
Food serving
Food
chains.
serving chains?
I mean, it's a very broad. I'll just tell you that
Is
not
Hello
soup.
Fresh? Is Hello Fresh on one of them?
No, not supermarkets. They're not. These are establishments that mostly serve food
Oh, you mean
in
like
one form or another.
McDonald's?
All right, so
McDonald's,
McDonald's is one. Go on.
Kentucky Fried Chicken,
Yeah, but that's not among the top five.
Wendy's,
Not among the top five.
not among the top five. 50 years ago, I could have said Howard Johnson's or something, but
Well, if it's not your mother, it must be Howard Johnson's.
yeah. Oh, well, if Wendy's and Kentucky Fried, not among the top five. Arby's?
No, not
Arby's is not on.
Arby's. Okay, when I tell you, you're going to hit yourself over the head.
All
Okay,
right.
Starbucks,
Starbucks. All right.
or as I lovingly call them, $4. Okay, Subway, not the
Subway.
train, but
Yeah.
the sandwich. Okay,
Right.
Dunkin' Donuts,
Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah.
McDonald's, which you did name, and Pizza Hut.
Really?
Yeah, the thing.
Really? Pizza Hut is
Yeah, yeah,
among the top five?
yeah. Especially outside New York. Yes.
I can't understand that. How could possibly Wendy's and Kentucky Fried Chicken not be on the top five, but Pizza Hut is on the top five? That's weird.
What was the lowest temperature ever in Wildwood, New Jersey?
Well, there you go. Well, we know it was 19 below at Tom's River. Wildwood, I'll say it's probably, I don't know, 20, 21 below.
No, no,
Wildwood, New
they were
Jersey.
on the coast, Joe.
Oh, that's right. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking of another Wildwood, which is wild root cream. Uh, yeah, Wildwood, New Jersey's in South Jersey. Um,
Just
I don't
north of
know,
it's just north
five,
of Cape May.
five, five below zero,
-1.
-1.
Minus
Okay,
one.
but how far back do the records go in
That
Wildwood?
I don't know.
Right.
That I don't know. So
Because New York City, of all places, is 15 below. We'll
right.
never see that again.
Don't listen. Don't say never. Say never. See that again, because the way things are going this year, I just had this. I just had this thought over the weekend that this will be the first. I'm half joking and half being satirical here, folks. So don't. I don't want this extrapolated into some sort of scientific prediction, but I'm thinking if there's any year that we'll get hit by 2 Category 5 hurricanes, okay, this would be the year. And if nature could
Oh,
figure out a way of doing it on both coasts, which we know is impossible, uh, given the laws of thermodynamics, but if there's any year where it's going to happen, this is going to happen, and then probably some sort of blizzard in November that that paralyzes the Northeast or something. I don't know. It just if it's going to happen, it'll happen in 2020. There's just too many
this
strange things going on.
this is a card that I got from when he passed away last October. This is Dr. Jerome Thaler, who spent the better part of his life making weather observations. He got the Thomas Jefferson Award from the National Weather Service for the longest stretch of continuous weather observations that he made on behalf of the Weather Service. And when I was at the funeral, I was talking with his son Dan. This is in October of last year now, and I said, I don't know why I just have this feeling because Dr. Thaler saw everything, in terms of anomalies, in terms of weather and climate and everything else here in this area. And I said, I just have this strange feeling that something is going to happen in the upcoming year. And we're all going to say the same thing. Those of us who knew Dr. Thaler, we're all going to say the same thing. Gee, it's too bad Jerry wasn't here to see this.
Yeah.
So the fact
Well,
that you said what you just said with 2 Category 5 storms, I hope that doesn't happen.
no,
But
I hope
I'm
not
just
either.
waiting.
It's just that the way it's going.
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop to say, like, my God, who would have believed something like this? And somebody like Dr. Thaler would have loved to have been around to see that. So
Bill Huber just hit super chat. Thanks, Bill. Really appreciate it greatly. Thank you very much. I hope your holiday weekend's going well. You didn't get the lightning hit. Bill actually lives very close to me, so he probably heard the big kaboom because it was very hard not to hear the kaboom. I had a headache after that because I was really close to it, Joe. I was like 30 feet away. It
Oh,
was
the
no,
most frightening thing is to not only see the flash but hear the kaboom that
yes.
simultaneous and at the same time too.
Right, and I was at that moment I thought I think maybe I should go inside now.
I think you should.
Although maybe I should have gone inside about a minute before the
Then,
kaboom.
yeah,
Reaver 501 has Long Island hit minus 20, minus 24 at Brookhaven on January 22nd
second, I think. The
in
2 days
1961, right after
the
the
Kennedy storm.
second big snowstorm of three that winter.
Yeah,
So
you talk about a
yes,
snowmageddon.
yeah, you
You
got to
talk
have
about a
the right.
snowmageddon.
You got to have the right setup to get. If you, it was a radiation. It was a radiational cooling type of night, but there was a really deep snow cover. There was about 2 feet of snow on the ground. So if you can pull off a combination where you've got that deep snow cover in the wintertime with a clear sky out in the pine barrens, and your temperatures are going to fall off the wall. So I've seen since then. I saw Gabrisky at one night in the last 10 years, I think got down to minus 18 or minus 20 under similar conditions. So it is doable. I think it is doable away from the warmer urban centers that you could see some really ridiculous numbers as long as you got that deep snow cover and a clear sky.
Yeah, well, you and I were working at Verizon FiOS one evening or one night couple of years ago, whatever. And you leaned over your computer and you said, "Take a guess what what it is right now in West Hampton." And whereas everybody else was like, I don't know, like 25 or 20 or something like that, they were down to like 8.
Yeah, it just
Like
it
something
gets and the
ridiculous, you
thing is,
know?
it's legit. It is legit. I living out here, it radiates like crazy sometimes under the right circumstances. So
We used to have a friend when you were back in the days when you were on News 12 Long Island, Don Thompson, who lived out in Noyak,
yes,
Eastern Long Island, and Don Thompson for the longest time was telling us how he used to bitterly complain to the National Weather Service because when the Weather Service was out in Rockefeller Center, the standard line was, you know, they always used to have warmer temperatures on Long Island because Long Island is at the coast. And what do you expect? The temperatures are cool or colder
right.
in the inland spots and warmer at the coast. And Don used to complain. He used to say, "My God, they never got it right out here because I was always much colder even in the inland
Right.
spots."
They forecasted Long Island as if it was an urban center,
Correct.
which
And once
which it's not. It isn't anything close to being
well,
an urban center.
once they all moved out to Brookhaven
Then
or
they know.
Upton,
Then they knew.
then they learned.
Yes. Leon Probitsky says Richard Hendrickson of Bridgehampton had the record for observing weather for 84 years.
Oh yeah, no one's going to beat that record.
Yeah.
No one's going to beat that. But for the Hudson Valley, by far and away, it was Dr. Thaler who not only took observations, he wrote 3 excellent books: Weather in Westchester and the Hudson Valley, Weather in the Catskills, Weather, for goodness sake, in the Adirondacks. They're on my bookshelf, and sometimes when we have something strange happen, I'll always consult that. I'm trying to find now Mr. Briller's. I'm trying to find Mr. Briller's questions here, and as per usual, they always disappear.
Yeah. Christina Pedia mentions that it's 66 degrees below zero at the South Pole right now, but with the wind chill factor, it feels like minus 101.
Lovely.
Those male penguins, which penguin is it? The king penguins? They actually they actually spend the whole winter in there with their chick underneath on their feet during the winter months while the females are out in the open ocean feeding, and they're there for 6 months after
Wow.
the egg is laid. The male in the fall, they do the opposite of what the other penguins do, which is come in the spring. I think it's the king penguin. Uh, the female lays the egg, passes it to the male, and when the male comes back in the fall, and then the female goes and she goes out for 6 months to feed, and he has the egg and the chick for the whole winter, the whole winter. you know,
I could say something about
so
that, but
so they stand
I'm not
out
going.
there, all huddled together in the
Yes,
darkness. I mean, it's just they somehow manage
they
to they do it. They do it. So
I
anyway,
found Briller Jeopardy for you. Here
all
we
right, go
go.
for it.
Category: MacArthur Airport ice slip weather extremes. Question one: what was the highest temperature ever recorded at MacArthur?
At MacArthur,
Right.
I'm going to say 105, 104, something like that.
104, right on the nose. Question two: what is the lowest temperature ever at MacArthur?
I want to say -7.
Well, you
I
you
want to
doubled that.
say it.
You doubled that, and you're right. -14.
Okay, -14.
And question three: what was the greatest 24-hour snowfall? Yeah, at MacArthur. I was actually surprised by this number. I would have thought it would have been a bit more than what Scott said, but
Well, they got 19 in that fourth nor'easter back a couple of years ago,
right,
and that was in March, and I know that set the record for March.
right.
I'm going to say probably well, now I'm trying to remember from the Snowmageddon storm, but that I got 30 out of that. But MacArthur was 2 miles south of who was 2 miles south of me only got 20. So I'll
Only
only 20. So I'll say something like I'll say 23, 24.
23.4 inches.
Okay, see that's what I meant. I meant
What
23,
about the
24.
blizzard of 78? They didn't. I always thought they got
You know,
12 of them.
but the time of day matters. So I don't know how how much of it fell on one 24-hour period. We're talking about 24-hour periods here
I guess
versus
24 hour
versus the
snowfall.
clock day. So noon to midnight. I'm sorry, midnight to midnight. You probably could make a case that 35 inches could have fallen half of one day and half
Right,
of another, and then it doesn't count. So
right. You're right.
two
You're right.
17 inches in two halves of a day, you get 34, but it only counts as 17. So
You're absolutely right about that. I mean, there's some of those storms have had longer than 24-hour durations and have had more than the 23.4, but we're talking about one 24-hour interval
right.
from midnight to midnight. So
All right. So
that's
last question for you from Reaver says, and it's an astronomical question, not an astrological one, but an astronomical one. What causes the moons to change phase? I noticed last night it was a full moon. I don't think that has ever happened on the 4th of July in his lifetime, that we had a
oh
full
yeah.
moon on the 4th of July, but I'm sure
It
we have.
well, there's an interesting cycle that was discovered by a Greek in the year 560 BC. The name of the Greek was Meton, and he discovered that the full moon or any phase of the moon will recur on the same date over a 19-year interval, more or less. So,
So every
uh,
19 years, we get it'll be on the next 4th of July full moon should be 19 years from now.
correct,
All
correct.
right.
But the thing is, um, you all you have to do is get to take a rubber ball or a tennis ball, go outside and just stand out in the sun and just move the ball around. You are the earth, the tennis ball is the moon, of course we have the sun, and it's just a matter of the changing angle of the angle of illumination
Right.
that that you're looking at that tennis ball. And the full moon is always 180 degrees opposite in the sky from the sun. So when the sun is setting, the full moon is rising. If you want to know, if you're one of those people who want to know on a night of a full moon, gee, I'd love to get a shot of the full moon when it comes up. All you have to do is step outside a few minutes before sunset, stand out there, look at where your shadow is, and your shadow is literally pointing to the spot on the horizon behind you where the moon is going to rise. That's for a full moon. And of course, the first quarter moon, the half moon, that's 90 degrees from the sun. That's usually up in the sky in the south as the sun is going down. And the last quarter moon usually comes up at midnight, 6 hours or so before sunrise. So that's basically the whole. But believe it or not, Joe, most people walking the street don't even know how to explain that, or don't even know how the moon fades. My grandfather, for example, said to me once, he said, so when we see the moon changing, that's the shadow of the earth falling on the moon, right? And I said, no, Grandpa, it's not. that's an eclipse. That's
Right,
something
that's different.
completely different or whatever. So
All right, let's we're gonna wrap it up here, folks. I got to save my internet data until I get my internet back up to 100%, so we could have a live stream tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. So keep your
yes,
fingers crossed on that. Have a great rest of your Sunday, rest of the holiday weekend. Congratulations to your son and your daughter-in-law, and to Mrs. Rayo, and on the wedding. And Joe, we'll see you tomorrow.